engagement. This has nothing to do with age. I used to think, if I can reach 50, I can drink as much as I can. I can't be an alcoholic. You're wrong. You can become an alcoholic at any age. It's not necessarily isolated only to a certain age group or even sex. Both men and women could develop different forms of addictions in any stage of their lives, period. I'm fine. So that's something that we need to have in mind, and we all need to be careful. We're going to try today go through some, and this is not a college course, because if you would have to become a substance abuse counselor, at least in New York, I think you will have to put, if you already have a professional degree in psychology or any of those mental health professions, you will have to put at least 350 hours of learning just to become qualified to sit for the test. So one lecture is not going to do it. However, we need to start talking about it so we know what to do. So if we talk about addicts, or we're talking about addictions, the picture that comes to our head right away is some kind of a junkie who's using, cocaine or, whatever you have in there, heroin, some junkie in the corner, and that's not true. That's absolutely not true. And we always wonder, both addicts, family of addicts, professionals, what are the reasons for a person, what are the causes for a person to become an addict? Identifying the active ingredients in what will make a person an addict will help us a lot to prevent and to identify and better help a person who is already going down that slope. Like any other problem, addiction is not just one particular thing. It's usually a whole cluster of problems that come along, usually. Now, before I continue further, I just want to, first of all, thank everybody who came, and thank everybody who was involved in making this happen. Without mentioning names, everybody knows what they did, so I appreciate it. I thank you. And I would like to dedicate this shiur to the memory of my father, who passed away 5 months ago, so the little I can do for him. So many causes and the combinations of them could light or trigger a red light to us in identifying a person who might be in a high risk for addiction. And we could divide that into a few segments. First of all, biological causes. After that is environmental, in terms of, not environment of the air, the environment of the person, community, social, and personality traits that might cause a person to become an addict. To many people, a one-time usage of most drugs, not all drugs, most drugs or some drugs does not make them an addict, however, opens up gradually an opportunity for that person to become an addict. So one needs to be very careful. It is, if you would read stories of addicts or how to become, or hear stories, it is scary how it starts. Certain of those drugs are, they're so potent that one time can get you hooked. Literally, one time can get you hooked. However, we're not talking today just specifically about those one-time, drugs that could cause you that. It's very important to remember and to acknowledge that a pleasure from the usage of one drug or one-time drug can cause you, again, use it over and over again, and gradually to use it on a permanent basis, and that will cause you to become an addict. Many times that addiction starts, believe it or not, through social encouragement. You go to friends. They tell you, go ahead, try something. Experiment that. It's not a big deal. Just one time. And later on, when it's becoming through chevre, through guys or girls or in a social event, it becomes an impossible trap for the person to come out of it. So therefore, people who don't have a lot of confidence, self-confidence, they try to prove themselves all the time that they are the cool kids, that they are tough kids, that they are, you know what I'm talking about. These are the guys that usually get hit pretty fast. So, as a side note, and we're going to touch those things, Bezrat Hashem, further in the future, as a parent or parents-to-be, you need from very young age, or at any age, identify if your child, and truly identify if your child is lacking self-confidence, and then take the necessary steps to enhance her or his self-confidence so they'll be able to develop a backbone to say no. If you see that your kid is like that, so he's like this, he was born like that, and I'll use the word he, it's just easier, but I say he or she or whatever it is today, it, and, you know. I'm not a politically correct person, you know, can I tell you? I'm just a correct person, not politically correct. I don't like politics. So you need to do that. You need to say, oh, 1 second, we have a problem with the kid, he doesn't have a backbone, let's do something for our kid to enhance his personality, to have more self-confidence. As a side note, for example, and I saw it many times, martial arts works perfectly. Right? It doesn't make a difference how big your kippah is and which orthodoxy you belong to. You gotta do what you gotta do for your kid. And many times that helps. Many times it helps. Addiction characterizes itself many times by an obsessive behavior that is meant to reach or to achieve or to get the same stimuli that you got beforehand over and over again. So if you see your kid or the person or friend or whoever it is obsessively trying to reach that, you know that you have a problem. These are all warning signs for us to watch out, to understand, to compromise. Many times that behavior will continue to grow and develop, and that will come on account of even basic physical needs of the person. For example, sleeping, eating. The kid stops sleeping, the kid stops eating, because all he is doing is trying to reach that stimuli again. You get hooked, and we'll see what exactly happens there. It could be also interpersonal relationship with people that the person is not able to keep anymore because people are an obstacle for him because he needs to interact with them and he is not interested in interacting with people. He wants to get a fix. The words dope, fix, and so on and so forth, they really hit the target when we're talking about those things. Addiction has many ways of expression in terms of the phenomena, in the results, in the way we actually acquire that addiction. However, most of the time is almost identical. Most of the time is almost identical, and in the long run, the person really has no control whatsoever in his addiction, and needless to say that the addiction at the end runs his life. that becomes the focal point, the central point of your life. And that's it. I mean, your life is evolved around that. Whatever that addiction will be. The list of addiction, Rabotai, is ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. You'll be surprised at the amount of addictions that are out there. And they're being revised because what addiction we had in the DSM-4 are not the same addictions that we had in the DSM-5 and 5 revised, because we developed new addictions. There always were addictions, but not in the magnitudes that we see them today. We always get trembled, unfortunately, when a life is lost due to severe addiction of drugs. But you can get addicted to many other things, whether it's gambling, food. One of the most difficult addictions out there is, sorry to say that, sex addiction. If a person goes to a rehab and then when he goes out, let's say he was addicted to painkillers, he gets a page with, X amount of stages that he has to go once he feels the urge, what he needs to do. When he goes out with a sex addiction, it's 3 pages. And today, the accessibility of information that we have, there isn't, by the way, an addiction to the internet. It is an addiction, believe it or not. So, it is scary what is out there. Ultimately, it has to do a lot, as we said before, about the way you look at yourself, confidence, backbone, and acquiring proper understanding of what our boundaries and limits are all about. Boundaries and limits are a good thing to have because you can operate. Sometimes we don't enforce that, and then we get a problem. And these are where the problem starts. We'll see later on, God willing, that a lot of the stuff could be minimalized if we take a good look at ourselves before we have kids, so the kids will not acquire them. So that addiction is really a problem that, as you could see, that really includes many different aspects of one's lives, and it really takes a toll on you and your life and the way you're able to live your life. Addiction is a primary illness. It is a primary illness that has all the ingredients of an illness that could not be cured. You need to understand that. So if your child is sick, or if your friend is sick, and let's say, God forbid, is spitting blood, or I don't know what is wrong with the person, you would advise him or take him to a doctor. You need to do the same thing to somebody who shows the signs of addiction. Don't push it under the rug. It's an illness. And, however, this illness, there is a treatment for it, and you could recover from this illness if you catch it early enough. You should understand that in most of the time, addiction comes to relieve pain, but in the result of relieving one's pain causes tremendous pain and suffering that the addict is trying to break away, but most of the time cannot do it alone. And we need to see what this pain is. According to theory, addiction is a pathological compromise that comes to protect the addict from bruises and blemishes in his own self-esteem that threatens to crumble him if he won't do something. In other words, many of the addicts, when they start doing that, are simply self-medicating themselves. And pain doesn't necessarily mean pain that you suffer in your body. It's an emotional pain that is overwhelming. So it takes something. As they say, when a guy comes home, he takes a drink. Comes home, loosens his tie, barely says hi to his wife, goes into the cabinet, takes Johnny Walker, puts whatever it is you're drinking, Johnny Walker Black, a little, and you ask him why you drink. He says, I'm taking the edge off. Taking the edge off, that's the first sign of addiction. That's how it starts. No such thing. You want to take the edge off, go take a shower, relax. Taking a drink and so-called taking the edge off of it is a sign that something is overwhelming you and you don't know how to deal with it, so therefore you're drinking. Somebody does it, offer them help quickly. Dependency on drugs is what we use many times as another word for addiction, is actually a dependency, a physical dependency on psychoactive material substances. I'm telling you, when I was looking, it's ridiculous the amount of drugs that are out there and the results of what they do to you, to your body. It's unbelievable. It's simply unbelievable. So that kind of addiction has very unique characteristic to it. However, there are other types of addictions which are behavioral addictions, and that really refers to any other activity or behaviors that are not substance or psychoactive substance involved. For example, gambling, internet, or to material substances that are not considered as psychoactive, like food. Example given. You want examples for addictive food? I'll give you. It's not a problem. Salt, sugar. You don't believe me? I'm going to ask you a question. When was the last time you tried to take one tortilla chips or one potato chip, put it in your mouth, and had nothing else? That's it, no more. Or Pringles? Somebody likes Pringles. Can you take one? Just eat one. You take one, you finish the whole thing. You gotta finish the whole thing. And then, I remember I had students in the Yeshiva. Listen, when I came from Israel, we didn't have. Now they make them in Israel, Pringles. But at the time, they didn't have Pringles in Israel. They looked like very weird things. And I see the guys taking stacks like this, and they go. I said, one by one. I said, no, Rabbi, no one by one. A whole bunch of them. And I was amazed. And I said, you know how many calories? Forget about the calories. You know how much sodium in this is? It's like you're eating salt. Oh no, we can't stop. So why are you starting? There was a guy that every day for lunch was Pringles and a bottle of 16 ounces of bottle of Coke. Every single day. Yep. So these are the things. For example, one needs to understand that there's a difference between addiction and a habit. Habit can cause addiction. Addiction is not necessarily a habit. If, for example, you have a tendency to always have something sweet after you eat, it's not necessarily that you have an addiction to sweets. Most likely you have maybe candida in your gut. Then you should go see a gastroenterologist. But that's an acquired behavior. Those behaviors are like this. People are addicted to salt. Salt has the characteristic of an addictive matter. Not necessarily as a drug. Not everything is a drug. Caffeine is a drug. And now, those things, of course, some have withdrawal symptoms, some don't have withdrawal symptoms. If you're a heavy coffee drinker and you try to stop coffee, I don't have to tell you about the headaches you get. And so on and so forth. So imagine to a person who is a junkie is getting that. But as you can see, addiction is not only to that. There is still somewhat of a dispute among psychologists in the way they use the term addiction in cases like this. Is it really an addiction or is not? However, today they start to recognize more that regardless of the great differences between the two types of addictions, they both have a very common, solid psychological base to them. In the bottom, they're all the same. And we need to understand that an addictive behavior that is both rewarding and reinforcing is a big problem. For example, a rewarding addiction will be uncontrolled shopping. When a person lives from one sale to another, I knew a woman, I mean, she was a coupon lady. She one time bought something like $200 worth of stuff, and every day before she used to come to the office, when I worked for my father-in-law, she used to stop at our job. She used to come with bags, and then just buy things. She was rewarding herself. I don't want to say too much because she's going to sue me or something. But it was a reward mechanism. So she was addicted to buying, to shopping, an uncontrolled shopaholic, as we call them. So those how should I call them? Units or cycles that we deal with, or mechanism, are very unique to the way our brain works. And those mechanisms are the ones who control our addictions. The main ones are the reinforcing mechanism in our brain and the rewarding mechanism in our brain. The reinforcing mechanism in the brain, which works by reinforcing stimuli of different neurological circuits in our head that cause a tremendous sensation of pleasure in a reaction to external stimulation. Those stimulation are being translated as positive and wanted stimulation. We want this. They're good, they're positive, we like them. That is a good thing. That is a good thing. That reinforcing, call it system in our head, is a certain level, it was a certain process of learning, of rewarding. That because of that, we have a motivation to go back on that same behavior that caused us to restart that mechanism in our head. For example, if I say something nice to someone, they make nice to me, it feels good. So I'm going to do the same thing again because I want to feel good. It's a system over again. That is a very good thing. So it motivates us to do things. I want it again. I worked, right? You tell your kid, clean the bathroom, I'll give you $1. That's a rewarding system, reinforcing that behavior. There's also negative reinforcement, but there is a very positive reinforcement. It makes me feel good. And somebody said to you, hey, you look good. So from now on, if I'll tell somebody, hey, you look good, you dress well, I could basically control his or her behavior to dress up the way I want, because every time they're going to dress a certain way, I'm going to say, hey, it's a nice shirt. And then tomorrow's going to come with a different shirt. so I can control that person. Those substances that we take operate the same way. How do they work? How does it exactly work? So in the main circuit of the reinforcement system, in that track, there is, of course, the very known neurological transmitter that's called dopamine. We are very interesting people. We are all, in a way, somewhat junkies for dopamines and serotonins in our heads. That's how we work. So that goes into to a part of the brain that is in the middle brain, and it is unbelievable how it works. Research has shown that psychoactive drugs work on that particular part, on our middle brain, so-called, and just give us false messages all the time. And we like it, and it makes us feel good. So instead of developing, and we have the reinforcing system in ourselves, instead of developing a positive pattern of behavior that would help us promote our needs in life, once we take in those drugs, we could look at it as an overactive reinforcing system. It works overtime. It works on a very high RPM, and certain stimulation known to do that, notoriously known to do that. Among them, cocaine or sex. And very powerful. And so therefore, this kind of a stimulation, when it is exaggeratedly reinforced, takes over your brain, basically. And when you do this over and over in a compulsive manner, without any regards to its negative implications, you have an addict. Because you keep on re-stimulating that into levels that are unbelievable. If this makes you feel good, and it's normal, once you take a drug like this and you go like that, it will feel super fantastic. You can't even imagine. So you want that all the time. And I heard from a person who used cocaine. He said the best time he used cocaine was his first time. After that, he just wanted that feeling again, and he never got it. And it's gone. One time, because it gave him a euphoric feeling. So we need to be very careful also how we educate our kids in terms of our rewarding. And it's very important to positively reward, whether it's your kids or your friends. You should encourage one another into doing a right thing, because a person needs that. A person needs to feel good. So if he feels somehow that he doesn't get it, he's going to look anywhere else to get that feeling. He must have it. For crying out loud, dogs need that. Animals need that. When you have a horse and you rode a horse for many years and all of a sudden you don't, the horse would come and it would push you, it would encourage you to ride it. But that's what it is. Of course, one of the things to do, of course, is to fill your life with purpose. But that's for a different lecture. You got to be with hands on the pulse all the time, not only of yourself, not only of your kids, but your friends as well. When we talk about doing chesed, we're talking about this also. It's okay to give somebody a compliment. You know what? You're learning very well today. I really appreciate your learning. I really appreciate what you did to me. Thank you. You're giving that person a little control pulse of dopamine in his head. You feel good. So there's no need to come home and actually. So if you have somebody that you're working that works for you, at the end of the day, say, listen, thanks for the effort. I really appreciate you thank you. So you're doing him a chesed, actually doing yourself a chesed, because tomorrow he's not going to come to work with a hangover. Say a nice word. And it goes to even interpersonal relationship between husband and wife and so on and so forth. Say something. Say a nice word. It doesn't cost you anything, but it sells you tremendously. So when we take those psychoactive material substances that penetrates through the blood, through the brain, and directly influence those neurotransmitters in your head, and it's difficult because you do it by drugs. However, in different types of addictions that is not psychoactively or substantially induced, that is through other stimulation that are that we view or we feel them as positive, so we're going to keep on doing them all the time without any substance. So therefore, we are talking about the reinforcing stimuli, which is a stimuli that increases the probability of repeating behavior paired with them, whatever that behavior will be with that stimulation, with that sense. And then we have the rewarding stimuli, which was the rewarding system in our head, which is a stimuli that the brain itself interprets as a positive and desirable, or as something to be approached, that we need this. And that's the rewarding. We get a reward for something. So that is more of a behavioral thing. Now, in terms of the causes of that, there are many different things. There are certain biological causes for a person to become an addict. According to many researchers, people who suffer from what we call attention deficit disorder, and it's not just a kid who runs around. I'm talking about the real thing, not every mother that doesn't want to take care of a kid. Classify my kid, call him ADD, ADHD. No, we're talking about people like that really have problems. It was noticed that they have a low level from birth in dopamines and serotonins. And these are the hormones that are being released from the brain. And as a result of that deficit, they use a drug that helps them in the short term. However, it really harms them in the long term. Short term it helps, long term it harms. And further than that, the reality of the life of people with attention problems is much more difficult and much more complex than what we call quote-unquote normal people or regular people. Life is very hard. So you got to be very compassionate for people like that. There are certain biological things, for example, also of consuming drugs to overcome a trauma, whether it's PTSD or whether it's sexual abuse or whatever trauma a person would experience. It seems that people who suffers a trauma in the past try endlessly to deal with this trauma that causes them as a result to lose control because of the stress that is not coming up to the surface. They can't bring it up, they can't bear it. That would lead you to use drugs as a way to deal with that. It's overwhelming for the person, so he would use drug, or she would use drug to overcome that. And this, of course, comes the point or the place of us as a community to be there for people who suffers a trauma. And we don't. Judaism calls it halachot. We have halachot of nichum avelim, or what we have to do for a person who somebody in his family died. It's a trauma. Support systems. Do we have it? We don't have it. So if we have somebody who uses drugs because of a trauma, and we as a community fail to address we also are guilty in the result of this person using drugs. We as a community must have in place the proper procedures to help people in need. Trauma could be even losing a job. You see a person down. You're so much big in chesed. You want plaques on the walls of every single thing. Did you ever bother to go to your friend and say, what's the matter? Why your face so down? Come on, let's sit down together. Let's have a cup of coffee. Let's talk. You're not alone. Don't worry. We'll help you. What's the problem? Tell me. But the person cannot express it, and it becomes like a tsunami to the point that they can't get out of bed. They can't breathe anymore. The anxiety is overflowing them. So they take a drug. Your kid could suffer a trauma. There could be a trauma in school. We forget sometimes. We didn't bring our kids to this world to be A-grade machines. So look, so what, your kid didn't get an A. Who cares? Who cares? That's the end of the world. Something happened to your kid in school. He misbehaved. She misbehaved. Okay, you have to address that behavior. However, you cannot throw your kid, under the bus. You're going to be there for them. And help them out. Support them. You don't want this to become an issue. Most parents don't want to deal with that. So as parents, we fail. You see a kid. You think you gave your kid everything. But your kid doesn't feel that he got what he wanted from you. Doesn't mean you didn't give him. But the kid feels that. You need to address that feeling. You don't address that feeling. You have an addict in potential. Under your watch. Your kid. It happens every day. There is a genetic factor, and many researchers shown that there is a component, a genetic component to addiction, where families, for example, are families that have a higher tendency for addiction, for example, to food, alcohol, drugs, work, shopping, etc. There's a genetic component. We're not getting into the fact of that alcohol, consuming of alcohol, could actually alter your genes, and later on, I don't know what's going to do to your kids. Alcohol is a big problem. I do believe that we are completely reckless. I mean, we all know not to smoke weed. I hope, guys, you're right. I don't care what the government says. First of all, whatever the government tells you, don't believe. You know that, first of all. So you go back about your business, everything is okay, you know everything is bad. Things are bad. Government tells you it's okay to smoke dope, don't. You don't know what I'm saying, go watch The Matrix. Everybody is dope. Alcohol, what we do with alcohol is horrible. And it starts at home, it starts at shul. So people who have families with the problem of alcoholism, most likely the kids have it also. It could be genetic, however, it could be also behavioral. We'll get to it later. By boys that come from families that have a higher tendency of becoming more alcoholic than girls. You should know that. Now there's the social factors, or social society factors. When we have youth, young adults, and adults are in an environment or a company of addicts, are in you should know they are in a higher risk to addicts or by developing this behavior, much more than families or kids or people that are in a neighborhood that is not such a common thing. So when you have a lot of good kids and cool kids or accepted kids and the, how do you call them, the queen bee, I don't know how you call this thing, the queen of the class, the queen, the cool kids do that, so most likely everybody else will do it eventually as well because they want to look like men. Girls will do it as well, but a little different than that. Children at the age of adolescence that drink or smoke cigarettes, not only drugs, cigarettes, and use drugs, of course, will have a tendency to be more influenced by social and societal factors, in other words, friends, family, and so on and so forth, where girls at the same age, the genetic factor is greater. So boys will be more influenced by society and social society, where girls at that age, when they become, it's more genetic. And that's a research that was done in University of Virginia. They tested almost 2,000 people, and they were pretty accurate on that. So we need to be very, very careful. So with girls and boys, the way to deal with it is completely different at that age of adolescence. There's a family factor. Of course, if you have parents who are addicts, and an alcoholic is an addict as well. Every addict will tell you he can control his addiction and he could quit at any time that he wants. However, they don't want to do it. Everyone will tell you that. However, it's false. They're not in control of their addictions and they need professional help. Going to a rabbi, open a book, fortune tellers, reading it in the palm of your hands, reading in the palm of coffee, in the palm of your foot, in the palm tree. These things don't work. You need to seek professional help. Not a rabbi. Professional. If you have a sore throat, you don't go to the rabbi. You go to the doctor. If you have a problem with addiction, you don't go to the rabbi. You go to a professional. I know some rabbis will not like what I have to say, but I have to say what I have to say. I don't really care. That's the truth. You want to do that? You want to be a rabbi who is able to do so? Please be my guest. Go to college. Go get a degree. Become a mental health counselor. Become a psychologist. Become a social worker. Become a psychotherapist. Go do it. But don't mix the two. However, rabbis should also have in hand a whole list of organizations and professionals which could help those people. Because they are also part of the first line of defense. So a rabbi that doesn't know where to send people in terms of rehab or professionals is falling asleep in a job. Wake him up. Difficulties in families. Children that experience problems in the youth or come from families that have very complex problems, issues, or many issues, are on the highest risk to become addicts as well. Children who suffered or felt they suffered neglect. It could be a parent was too busy making $1. His son or daughter feels they were neglected. They are at higher risk to become addicts or develop addictive behavior. Children that suffer abuse, mental, physical, or sexual abuse, are at higher risk to become addicts as well. Those things don't just disappear. They stay there and they grow and they control your life, and you have to address them. If you have a child or you know of someone or a sibling that feels that they have a problem in school, for example, with a teacher or a Rabbi is deliberately picking on them. You must address this problem and get down to the bottom of it, because that could be a scar to your life. If the kid feels like that, not because he got a C or got a D or got an F because they didn't learn, but because he feels, he comes home crying or upset, you must stop everything you do and get down to the bottom of that, because the kid is experiencing a trauma that later on could become into an issue of addiction or substance abuse when he gets older. You can't imagine the damage that those things do to our children. Nicely, you can ask. You have to get down to the bottom of it, but nicely. I got the hint. Thank you. And that is, by the way, also a matter of, because remember we talked about the reward stimulus, the reward system. So when a kid feels that he's neglected, for example, his parents don't pay attention to him, he would want that reward, that acknowledgement, because he needs that feeling. He might find it somewhere else, so you need to address that as well. There's a personality factors, we're almost done for today. There's a personality factors where a person reaches situations in his life where he sees the drug as a solution to his problems, mainly when he enters a mental distress, and the drug is basically the support in which they lean to, or when he wants to sometimes change the habit of regular, mundane boredom of life. Every single day, I go on a bus at 7 o'clock, I come home at 6 o'clock, I take my clothes, I read the paper, I turn on the TV, I fall asleep, I go to sleep. I wake up in the morning on the mundane. He wants to change it. He got tired. So he decided to spike out life a little bit. He would try something to do. How about we take some vitamins, some methane, or, make things a little interesting. How about a little LSD? When I was a kid, I never, in the hippies or whatever. I heard LSD is not addictive, so how about we try that? That's a problem. That's why we have to have one another to feel the pulse of the other, to support in that. When a person feels that he is closed or trapped within his world and only the drug can set him free, so when he goes into a downslope for even a slight depression, not a long term, a slight depression, a little downslope on his life, or sadness, even if he wants to take the drug for something more intimate, he can take it, he takes it, and then can never stop using it. You have to stop it at the base. You have to start it before it started. There is issues of factors of personality, of dependency. The people who have a difficulty to deal by themselves with the difficulty of life, whether you think it's hard or not, whether you think it's a problem, whether you think it's a difficult situation or not, that does not make a difference. What makes a difference is what the other person is feeling. You have to listen to the other person. If they feel overwhelmed that they can't do that, and they have a tendency to have a dependency, because that's their personality, and they need somebody to lean on to help them, there are more people who are dependent. They would not be able to open a book and learn themselves. They always need somebody else. They're in a risk to become addicts as well. Certain people who have their control system is external. In other words, they feel that things happen to them without having any control over their lives or any responsibility for their actions. Okay? Things happen to me, I don't know why. All the bad things happen to me. Or, it's never my fault, it's always somebody else's fault. Kind of a thing. People that think that only somebody external can help them, they cannot help themselves. They don't find the internal power to deal with the problem. They also have a high risk. I'm talking about high risk people to become addicts. People who have a tendency for depression or anxiety. It's the same thing. They're looking for very ineffective ways to deal with those hard feelings. And anxiety is something that kills a lot of us. I mean, really destroys a lot of us. And we don't help it. Many times as parents, we don't help this anxiety feelings. So they want to, as we say, take the edge rid of these feelings without taking a personal responsibility to solve their own problems. They'll start using, whether it's alcohol or gambling or shopping or harder things than that. I'm sure that as I'm talking, everybody is going on their heads. They know one or two people. I know this person. I don't know, maybe they do that every time I come, you know. Rabotai, this is real. The issue of overdosing is a very painful issue, but it is the tip of the iceberg in terms of what addiction and how bad addictions are. You have no idea. People who have a problem creating intimate relationships or interpersonal relationships. How many people like that do you know? People are afraid to be open and to reveal their feelings. They feel very vulnerable. So in order for them to open up, they have to have a drink. Right? You go to a party, or you're going to sounds like Carly's hand. You're going to you go to a party. The first thing you do, right? You know, a guy is shy. He doesn't feel comfortable. She's shy. She doesn't feel comfortable. You have a glass of wine, and all of a sudden, you know, best buddies. On that, Chazal says, "Dichnas yain yatsa sod." You drink wine, a secret comes out. You're taking the edge out. Why do you need a wine to speak to a person? I mean, what is the person going to do to you? Going back to the problem of self-esteem and so on and so forth. You don't need alcohol to be able to communicate with people. You can't see who the real person is because you're going to tell me, oh no, only when they drink I know who the person is. No. When you drink and then you can only talk, you know you have a person who has a problem talking. Don't do that. Why can't you just have a conversation with a person? If a person like this is around you, and the only way they can, you know, they are completely different once they drink. Before they drink, they're like little, you know, mice in the corner. Once they drink, they become lions in the center of the party. These are people with great potential to become addicts. So a combination of all this, whether it's biological, whether it's societal, whether it's environmental, or even parts of them, could put you in a high risk for addiction. I don't want to take it too long today. I spoke way too much. However, what I would like you to do is I would like you to think about all the things that we mentioned today. First of all, if you have questions, you can always reach out to me either by telephone or by email. You can do so through our Yeshiva website at, rabbigaon@gmail.com. You can reach us over there. You can send me questions, and if you have a question and it's private, so he says, I have a question for Rabbi Gaon, they will forward me and then I'll give you my private email and we can communicate that way. However, again, I am not a substance abuse counselor, but we could help each other directing into the right path for people. If you have friends, don't wait until they are in rehab. Try to do it beforehand. Be there for people. And be very, very careful. I would like to tell you something before I go. I would like to... Okay, I can't tell you what I do or to do what I do, because that would be wrong. However, I don't go to Kiddush on Shabbos. By Dafka. Kiddush is a nice thing. I think one of the problems is, and it's a bad example, because I want to leave you with something, it's a bad example for our kids to see, especially daddies, going to shul and coming home a little tipsy. I would like to see rabbis getting together and actually, at all cost, wishful thinking, will do something to eliminate or minimize the amount of liquor consumed in the shul, because it's absolutely inappropriate. It's inappropriate in the house of God. People will be drunk. I don't care if it's a brit milah, bar mitzvah, Irish funeral, I don't care what it is. That's not the place to have alcohol. It is horrific when daddy comes home after he had a little too much to drink to make Kiddush at home. I think it's terrible. I think it's disgusting. I think it's horrific to what you do to your kids. And if, for whatever good reason, rabbis don't watch this, maybe you could reach the rabbis and say, rabbis, can you please do that? Less alcohol. We don't need Kiddush, for crying out loud. We have great food at home. Our wives, our daughters make us terrific food. We don't need to eat food in shul. Why? Because it's free? So I think they should not have Kiddush altogether. If that's the only reason why you come to shul, you have a problem. We have a problem. And when we say that we have people in our community use drugs, we have a problem. Not they have a problem, we have the problem. And we got to do something about it. And it's the obligation of each and every one of us. And it starts at home, and it starts with you. And it starts with your beer, and your alcohol, and your little spliffs. You're not Bob Marley, you're not Rastafarian. Don't use dope. It's bad for you. A man is not measured by the amount of liters or gallons of vodka he can pour down his belly. A man is measured by his ability to say no. Where you can stand and have a backbone that says, I don't do that. And that's the best example you can give to your kid. Because whatever you do, your son will do more. And if daddy comes home drunk on Shabbat or tipsy on Shabbat, your son will be drunk 6 days a week, if not all week. And we have to stop with this. And we have to stop with free pot. The only pots you should use is the pots in your cupboard. The one you make beans and food in. Not the pot you smoke. It makes you stupid and weak and vulnerable. If you are a man, you don't smoke. If somebody gives you a little, what do you call this? Puff. You yell at him. Says, that's what you think of me? I thought you were my friend. Now get out of here. I don't want to see you anymore. Don't listen to what the government tells you it's okay to use. It's not okay to use pot. It makes you into a loser. And we can't do anything once we are losing. And that's a lost battle. And we need to win it. And the only way we're going to win it if we all going to be in it together. All of us. From the Gabaim, to the rabbis, to the women, to everybody. We all have to be on board with that. And we have to reward positive and productive behavior. And we should confront this kind of behavior. We all in this together. The fact that a person does not consume drugs doesn't make him or give him a pass not to take a part in the effort to eradicate this. And we have to. So again, if you have questions and you need further help, or you have any feedback, I would like to hear from you. Make sure it's a nice feedback. I also want my reward stimulant. You can do so again at rabbigaon@gmail.com. I would like to, as I said to the ladies previously, there's an organization in Israel, it's called Returno. It deals with rehab of Jewish substance abusers. Hopefully we'll be able to form some kind of a productive partnership with them and with other professionals, because I don't want to be the only one speaking. I would like to actually bring professionals here to speak as well. Next time we can speak about other issues. If you have questions or requests, you can do so through the email. Again, rabbigaon@gmail.com, and then we move forward straight into my email. If you have something personal, I'll answer you through my private email. You can go to our Yeshiva website at yeshiva.etzion.com and watch the lectures if you're interested in other stuff at Torah Anytime on YouTube. And please spread the word out, and let's try to win this one person at a time, but all together. Amen.